You see him on the news.
CNN.com contributor, Dean Obeidallah. So, Dean...
Watch him at comedy clubs.
When I say Mecca, do you think of a holy place or an urban clothing line?
Read his articles. And you hear him on the radio. The Dean Obeidallah Show is on live right here on SiriusXM Progress, Channel 127.
And welcome to the show, brothers and sisters of the Resistance. Tuesday, January 29th, I'm Dean Obeidallah. We're live for the next 3 hours. A lot of stuff to cover. I'm on Twitter, as always, at Dean Obeidallah, where I'm needy at all times. Facebook.com/Dean of Radio, where you can watch the live stream with my guest sitting next to me, our friend, Michelangelo Signorelli, who's going to stick around for a few minutes to talk about the Jussie Smollett case and what's going on. And, of course, on email, dean@deanofradio.com. Michael, thanks for staying a few minutes. You just had your show. You talked about what happened with Jussie. And what we know for sure, at least from the reporting, is that this was a horrific hate crime. I mean, I say that as a lawyer, and that assuming everything in the statement to the Chicago police is accurate, that he was attacked for his race and for his sexual orientation. They yelled homophobic and racist things at him. So when you first heard about this, being a member of the LGBT community, what was your reaction?
I was horrified, stunned. You feel very emotional because you understand that hate and that way of being targeted, because of your sexual orientation. Now, in his case, it was also being a black gay man, right? A double target, if you will, a hatred that has been emboldened in the Trump era. I mean, it's always been there. There's no question about it. But we've seen the numbers. We've seen the statistics. The last 4 years have been going up, in the last 2 years in particular, surging against LGBT establishments, against people who have been attacked, and even in big cities. People in New York, in Los Angeles, in Chicago, where this happened, it is happening. And, that you feel right away. Right.
And he's been on your show before. I didn't know that. Because he's been an activist. Times. I mean, he was on Reverend Al Sharpton's MSNBC show just Sunday. He happened to be on. Happened to be watching a few minutes. So when he's coming on your time, what's he talk about?
He loves to talk about politics. I mean, he's come on the show to talk about, the latest season of Empire and what's happening. Of course, he plays an openly gay musician, an openly gay star on the show. So he comes to talk about that, but he says all the time, okay, I'm glad we got that part out of the way. And he loves talking politics. He loves talking about what's going on. And he really speaks truth to power. He comes from an activist family. Okay. And I mean, his mother has really instilled him, his parents have really instilled him with that activism and speaking out. And, he grew up with Angela Davis around and the Black empowerment movement. So, as a gay man, he's brought all of that to the struggle. And he's, called Donald Trump a horrible racist pig. And he doesn't mince words. So, I mean, you can understand why if this was a premeditated attack.
Right. They were targeting him, which
they were targeting
might be
we
true.
We don't know.
Right. It's interesting because I was going to ask you, is there a sense that they were targeting him? So let me ask you, though, because we don't know. We don't know the answer yet. There is some other reporting. I saw that earlier, Michael. You asked me when I came in, did you see reporting that he was sent a letter from someone with a threat? I did see that, but it wasn't in a mainstream publication. It was almost like blog-ish. So I'm not sure about those facts. So I don't want to get into that.
Right,
We're going to find out.
And I think wherever it is, it's always good nowadays to wait until you have 2 confirmed publications, whatever publication it is, even if it's the New York Times or whatever, you want to know that another publication has confirmed it. So that much we don't know. We do know what is in the police report. Right. They poured some sort of chemical substance on him and put a rope around his neck.
It's unreal to think that. When I read that they poured a chemical, and the reporting suggests it might be bleach, but someone walking around, and the reporting is they had masks on. If that's true or not, I'm not positive right now, but I've seen some reporting about that. If you're carrying a noose, you're carrying bleach, that's definitely true, at least in the reporting. These people were targeting someone, and I don't know if they just happened to see him walking around or they knew him from his activism and from the work he has done on television and his political activism. We're going to find out more, and I hope they catch them. But also happening in Chicago, which is one of the bluest cities, at least in paper, I think it's interesting because the idea that hate is confined to red states is wrong. It's dangerously wrong. It's irresponsibly wrong because there's hate in New York City. There are people are attacked in Manhattan for being a minority status. It's happened even in recent years. And there was a great documentary on MLK, and I know it's years ago, but in 66, 67, he was in Chicago, and he said we never got more organized pushback against them than in Chicago than in the South when they were trying to raise attention about segregation in the housing. So what's your, let me ask you, in the big picture though, the LGBT community, how do you view the time under Trump? Because you've been through a lot as a community, clearly. How is it different?
There was so much that happened in the Obama years so dramatically and so quickly. The fall of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, marriage equality, the President of the United States coming out forward, even though that was a fight in the courts, it was also a fight for public opinion. The courts also follow public opinion, and the Supreme Court waited it out, you know, and allowed public opinion to shift, and the president helped that. And it was a dramatic shift. And I think there was a sense beyond people like myself, who are people who've been journalists and activists and in the movement, the larger community, there's that sense of, you know, oh, we've arrived, marriage equality has come, the fight is over. And, you know, I wrote a book in 2015 called It's Not Over.
Right, we talked about that, I think, on my old Inside show.
You know,
right.
I mean, and I hate to have been right about that, but what we're now seeing is the backlash and the rollback with Donald Trump. And I think for a lot of people, it's utter shock. I think they're in shock seeing Jeff Sessions move to take away rights as Attorney General, siding with those who are trying to do so in the courts, the transgender military ban. This is the first time we've seen a class of people who have been integrated into the service now removed from it. You know, we went from, you know, Harry Truman integrating the services in terms of blacks and whites. We had women, we had gays and lesbians, then Obama with transgender people, and now Trump is rolling it back.
It's, you know, and I'll talk later because I'm only going to keep you a few minutes. Use the whole show about other communities like African American and the hate crimes in my community, Muslims, what we've gone through. I'll just say one thing. I mean, we had President Obama who, you know, visited a mosque in his last year as president, who had a middle name that was Muslim, who went to Muslim schools when he was younger. And then you have Donald Trump who campaigned on banning Muslims and ginning up fears of Muslims. So I understand exactly what you say when you think as a community you've got to a certain place and then this backlash builds. And do you think that it does play a role in emboldening bigots when they hear someone like Donald Trump say, I want to ban transgender Americans from our military? And they argued against expanding Civil Rights Act protection under the 1964 Civil Rights Act to sexual orientation in the courts. They were arguing it against in the courts, and that got press. And clearly the far right wing of the evangelical movement has an inordinate influence, and people who your community and I view as hate leaders, like Franklin Graham's and they escape me. Some of their name, but you know, we know who they are. SPLC lists them all as hate groups. Are part and parcel of this White House Faith Council. They're all Tony Perkins, people like that are there. So when you see that, I mean, it's got to be stunning because I see the anti-Muslim bigots that are part of this administration. I mean, he had John Bolton, Mike Pompeo was arm in arm with the worst anti-Muslim bigots in America for years, and people think like he's a nice guy because he's jolly. No, he hung out with the worst people out there.
It does embolden them. And, you know, we even have some data that showed, some research that showed that for the first time, GLAAD had done some research showing that they saw a drop in support for equality for LGBT people under the Trump years. Now, what is that about? I think those are the people just being honest. Maybe before they were feeling like, you know, you have to say it. Donald Trump's allowing them to say it. And I think it's worse than just, you know, allowing them. I think he's telegraphing to these people, especially as things get desperate now, that they have to get desperate too. I think we should be very prepared for violence and for what could come.
I had on a counterterrorism expert, or terrorism expert, I should say, and he had just written a book. He's written countless books about ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and one was really famous. But we talked about white supremacist terrorism under Trump, and he said that everything he sees with Trump is that, like a radical leader, an extremist leader, if he were to call for violence, some percent, he can't tell you the answer. It could be 0.1%. It could be 5% would go violent. And that's the fear all of us as we get closer to Trump facing potentially being removed before the election. But even if he runs for election, who knows what we're going to see? And your community, my community, is certainly on the front lines. African-American community, immigrants, Latino immigrants especially, we're all in peril. We're all in the crosshairs of some extreme radical Trump supporters, not mainstream ones who might not like us, but they're not going to do any violent things. Someone out there unhinged, like the Tree of Life Synagogue.
We had the MAGA bomber.
Right. We had the MAGA bomber. So it's, we're going to find out in the next few days, perhaps next day, we'll find out more about this. It was stunning. It was trending on Twitter right off the top. In the middle of the day, I exploded. I'm like, what's going on? You read the stories, and my mouth fell open. I couldn't believe what happened to Jesse. So, Michael, thank you, my friend, for staying a few minutes here.
Thank you
and
for
sharing.
talking about it.
Sure, we're going to talk about it more with listeners after this as well, but I appreciate your time, my friend. Thanks for staying. So let's take a quick break. We're going to come back, take a quick break, come right back. We'll take your calls. We're going to talk more about the case of Jussie Smollett and exactly what we know now, what we don't know, and what we do know about a documented spike in hate crimes against various communities of color and marginalized communities and LGBT community and Muslim community under Trump. So we don't know the exact facts right now, what happened to Jussie Smollett, but I can tell you what's happened to America the last few years. Let's take a break and come back and talk about that. Look, it's time the media start calling out Trump's false statements for what they are. Lies. Trump is a liar. And by the looks of it, he's lying every day and twice on Sundays.
The Dean Obadala Show.
You're listening to the Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM's Progress.
And welcome back, Dean Obeidallah Show. I want to thank Michelangelo Signorelli for sticking around a few minutes after his show to talk to us about the case of Jussie Smollett and the LGBT communities, where they look at now their place in America and how it's changed under Trump. Because I can tell you, as a Muslim American, our place has changed in this country. But let's talk about what we know about Jussie Smollett and what we don't know. And he's an actor in Empire. I think most people probably know who he is. He's openly gay. In the statement of the Chicago police, and that's what I'm really reading from, it says the offenders began to batter the victim, which is Jussie, with their hands about a face and poured an unknown chemical substance on the victim. It's believed to have been bleach. That's not confirmed. I want to be very clear about what's confirmed and what's not confirmed. They're investigating it as a hate crime. They said the attack occurred around 2 a.m. Chicago time, that two men hurled racial and homophobic slurs at Jussie, and that according to police statement, at some point during the incident, one of the offenders wrapped a rope around the victim's neck. Then the offenders fled the scene. Now, this is unconfirmed. TMZ, which is not a news outlet, was saying that the two assailants were both white men wearing ski masks, yelling, "This is MAGA country," MAGA, MAGA country. The Chicago Police Department spokesperson, when asked about that, said, "We cannot confirm what the offenders stated." Does not mean they didn't say it. Doesn't mean they said it. We don't know. So we're going to leave it as we're going to let the police do their job. There's no need to jump to conclusions here. So we don't know that. What we do know, though, and this is very clear, Jesse's in the hospital. He's in a stable condition. He's recovering. I saw some reports he might have broken ribs. That could have changed in the last few hours, but that's what I had seen. What else do we know? This is undisputed. Hate crimes in America have risen. Last year alone, they went up, in 2017, I should say, because it's trailing by almost 6 to 8 months, all the hate crime quantification. According to the FBI, in 2017, hate crimes went up 17% for the third year in a row. It's unheard of in America to have 3 years in a row of an uptick in hate crimes. We've not seen that in modern day. It's not a coincidence. Those 3 years include Donald Trump's campaign for president and 2 years as president, or it was a year as president and his campaign began in 2015. It mirrors that. Of the reported hate crimes in 2017, the number one victims were African Americans, then Jewish Americans. The crimes, big spike, though, in attacks on Muslim Americans. According to NAACP last year, the president, Derek Johnson, said, "From campaign to election, this president has spewed the language of division and hate and has manifested not only racist policies, but in racist acts against people of color and other groups." So the NAACP sees a direct link between Donald Trump's climate, where he refused to denounce David Duke, where he spewed open white supremacist garbage, retweeted white supremacists during the campaign. Charlottesville, after a white supremacist terrorist attack, did nothing in terms of any kind of sincere condemnation. Instead, said there were fine people on both sides, calling Africa S-hole countries, and the list go on. It's very, very clear. Regard to LGBT community, there was a spike in 2017 as well. They said of people who were attacked for their sexual orientation or gender identity, 1,400 people were reported as victims. The next closest year was 2010, 1,200. So you see this spike building. And I want to talk a little bit about the Muslim American community and something that just happened last week, which I wrote about for the Daily Beast. And I'm thankful the Daily Beast covered it, and some print journalists cover it. I couldn't get anyone on MS or CNN to cover it. And it's one thing to be targeted, your community, by bigots and racists. It's another when the media doesn't seem to care. Like your community's lives just don't matter to them because you can't get the ratings for them when you're a victim. But if you were the perpetrator of terrorism, you know they would cover that. And that's the world we live in as Muslim Americans. Here's what happened last week. 3 young guys and one 16-year-old were arrested in New York State. They were plotting a terrorist attack. There's no doubt it was a terrorist attack they were plotting on Islamburg, New York. You may have heard of Islamburg before. It's a community of about 200 families, primarily African-American Muslims. It was begun in 1980. And Fox News, for the years, as I document in my article since the mid-2000s, has continued said this is a terrorist training camp. It is absolutely not. I quoted numerous police officials in my article, which was quoted in other articles as well. Absolutely that's not true. It doesn't matter, though. Fox News continues to spew this hate And the result is there's been people harassing and taunting this community, including these men who were arrested, these young men who were arrested. One of the 4 arrested was clearly a self-professed Trump fan. There's no doubting that. There's no dispute here. Social media, he's like 19, he invited Donald Trump via Twitter to come to his Eagle Scout Award ceremony. He talked about defending Confederate statutes and Confederate flags. He loved MAGA. He talked about killing Muslims on social media, including killing Muslim children in this country, saying, kids have been shown to be terrorists too and have killed our people. The Quran tells them to kill us, so they're all guilty. The police chief in their town found 3 IEDs these young men had constructed that were IEDs are improvised explosive devices that had mason jars packed with nails and BBs. They had access to 23 firearms. As the police chief, Patrick Phelan, said at a press conference, if they had carried out this plot, which every indication says they were going to, people would have died, adding, I don't know how many and who, but people will have died. With this doesn't get national media attention. You have people, MAGA, Trump supporter, at least one, the others probably as well, white supremacist, young people plotting to kill Muslim Americans in a community. It gets no press. When my community is the target of terrorism, we get no coverage. When we are the terrorists, though, we get inordinate amount of coverage. Nothing. Nothing in mainstream media about this. On Friday, something else happened on Friday. 3 self-professed Trump supporters in Kansas were sentenced to 25 years to prison. 25 years to prison. For what? For plotting to kill Muslims in Kansas. And they were Trump supporters, absolutely, undeniably. They even talked about, from the FBI tapes, dipping their bullets in pig's blood before killing the Muslims, Somali refugees in Kansas. And that's the exact same story Donald Trump has talked about. This debunked story of General Pershing dipping bullets in pig's blood before shooting Muslims, and somehow that's going to end terrorism. But that got no national press either on cable. It got print coverage. One of these will get through. Islamberg has been subject, and I've talked to their community several times through emails and at events. You know, they're hated for being black and for being Muslim. There's no doubt it's intertwined. They had the Proud Boys. Gavin McGinnis's group went up last year, 3 years in a row, to taunt them on their motorcycles driving up there. And the police were there to protect the people of Islamisburg. And, you know, MAGA is not a hat. MAGA is hate. That's what it is. And that's what we're living through right now. And I don't know how much worse it might get, but I can tell you I would not be surprised when the FBI gives us the new report this year. For last year's hate crimes, we've seen an even bigger spike. Don't forget we had the right-wing terrorist attack at the Tree of Life Synagogue. That was a terrorist attack. It had a political motivation. It should have been called terrorism, but it's only terrorism in our media when the actual assailant is Muslim. Because why? And here's the worst part of why. Because that gets ratings. When it's the Muslim brown guy who commits a terrorist attack, that gets ratings. But when it's a white person who is the perpetrator of terrorism, that doesn't get ratings. That gets excuses and apologies. And I can tell you firsthand, because I've pitched stories over the years to producers at various networks who are friends. And I'd say about this guy, Robert Doggett, who you don't know, but you should know. He tried to kill the people in Islamisburg a few years ago. He got sentenced to 20 years in prison. So these aren't games, 20 years in prison. When he was first charged, I wrote about it. I went to producers at MS and CNN. I said, will you cover this? And they said, he's probably crazy. There was no allegation he was crazy anywhere. But because he was a middle-aged white guy, that's what they were conditioned to say. You see, when you're white and you want to commit a terrorist attack, you get taken for food, or you get called crazy. But when you're brown, we're calculated. We can't be insane. If you're black, you're a thug. This is the world we live in. So I'm not trying to make this about me, but I was so angry last week. We didn't have time to cover this story. And I'm like, I have my own show. Why am I not talking about the terrorist plot on my own community when I have this opportunity to do this? So what we know now today, we'll know more about what is clearly, if everything is reported as accurate, it's a hate crime. It's no doubt it's a hate crime. And we'll see what more we find. But the frustration I had over the weekend of no one wanting to report on this, even my friends, I'm like, just cover one story, 5 minutes on this community. Because the community of Islamberg gets less safe by the day because it doesn't get covered. because you have the story on Fox News and right-wing media telling everyone they're terrorists, it's a terrorist training camp. It's absolutely not. But it doesn't matter. And their lives don't matter. And that's the feeling we get in our community. And that's the reality. So, all right, I'd love to hear from you. 866-997-4748. What do you think about the news today? We don't know. I mean, there was early backlash going on. I mean, early reporting, they may have had a MAGA, maybe yelling MAGA stuff. We just don't know that. There's no need to jump to conclusions about if the attack in Chicago last night on Jussie Smollett was by people wearing MAGA hats or yelling MAGA stuff. We will find it out. What we do know is that he was attacked. There was a noose involved. They had chemicals, which apparently may have been bleach. It was a planned hate crime. And this is the world we live in. And we had hate crimes before Donald Trump. I'm not pretending we don't. But we've seen a quantified spike, according to the FBI, over the last 3 years. There's no doubt about that. And if you don't think Donald Trump is connected and the language of those spewing intolerance is tied to acts of violence, you don't know history. And I say that with all due respect. Our history from the civil rights movement shows us that when George Wallace won in Alabama for governor and ran on a platform of segregation today, tomorrow, and forever, it didn't satiate the appetite of the white supremacists in Alabama. They went out and did more bombings. Within a few months of him being sworn in as governor, the 16th Street Baptist Church was blown up, the famous thing which killed 4 young African-American girls. In Mississippi, when their white supremacist governor was elected, it didn't satiate the appetite of white supremacists. It emboldened them to commit more acts of terror against people of color because they felt the person in the governor's mansion has their back. History tells us that. And history tells us that Donald Trump is telling those people who commit horrible acts, who are white supremacists, I have your back because I'm not going to criticize you and I'm going to make you feel good about yourself. That's where we are. 866-997-4748. Let's take some call. Here is Milton from New Jersey. How are you, Milton?
Dean.
How are you, brother?
Salam alaikum, brother.
Alaikum salam. What's going on?
Oh, man, you know what? I'm just pissed. I just don't know what else to do. I mean, I'm sure you see me on Twitter a few times going crazy on some of these Trump supporters.
Yep.
You know, I'm black, I'm Muslim, and I'm a veteran. And I'm just pretty much tired of it, man. You know, these MAGA people, I don't know what it is, man. I don't think people really realize what is going on. Either they don't or they don't care. You know, me being a minority, being black, I get it from that angle.
Right.
Me being Muslim, on top of that, I get it from that angle as well. So it's just something I have to deal with every single day, as I'm sure you do too, as well, my brother.
Well, I look whiter. I mean, I look not whiter than a black guy. I look like a white guy. I can pass in a level. It's my last name that'll get attention. People go like, "What kind of name's Obadallah?" And they'll go, "Is it Italian?" I go, "I'm half Italian, but it's actually that's Arab Muslim name." And I go, "It has Allah in it." And they always go, it's always like this, like, "Oh," they look at it, they go, "Oh." I'm like, "That's right. It means servant of Allah." So then they get it. Milton, during the time of Trump, and be honest, has things changed in any way in your sense, either personally or community-wise, about hate incidences in either way, up or down?
Here's the thing. Again, you know, me being black, I'm pretty much used to seeing it all the time. But the thing is this. Now it's more upfront, more overt racism and just the craziness. It's like they're not afraid anymore to be crazy, racist, and out of control. Which, to be honest with you, I prefer my racism up front. You know, show me your racism, I can deal with it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I know what you're saying.
You know what? I'm not going to deal with you. Let me go the other way. But these people it's just crazy. It's just insane. It's just like it went up to another notch. You know what I mean?
They feel they feel good about themselves. They feel like they don't have to hide their hatred for other communities like they used to. And they're acting out. And the problem is, for me, is that I want to be wrong, Milton, but the future might be even more violent because the history tells us when white supremacy is challenged, violence is one of the tools used to keep them in power. And as demographic change continues to happen in this America, I've talked about this before, I have great concerns about how some fringe people in the white community might go to violence because history tells us we need to be aware that could happen. And I'm hoping not. If you had a president who was more responsible, perhaps I wouldn't have to be as fearful of that. But I'm worried for the future.
This is true. And I what's funny is I emailed you a while ago because I had a friend of mine who I've known this guy. I basically, not that I raised him, but I put him in the right path, put him in the right direction, showed him some things because I'm about 10 years older than him. Not a racist bone in his body.
Right.
He became a Trump supporter, and he completely turned into a whole completely different person. And I told him, I said, listen, man, you got to understand something. You're my friend. You are still supporting this man. And I said to him, I said, the man is a virulent racist. He is a virulent racist, and you condone that. And he tells me everyone is racist. And I said, you know what, man? I can't deal with you anymore.
That's ridiculous. That's not an answer. Everyone's racist. That's
exactly. So
everyone's racist. Oh, my God.
I don't know, man. This is, that's the thing. And, and again, just put that closer point on there. It's not so much that it's more racism. The racism has always pretty much been the same. It's just now they're just more out in front and not afraid of it anymore.
And you cannot. The reason I wanted to read the FBI reports, those are actual statistics by the FBI, not by an organization that's like a advocacy group of any community. This is objective. Mm-hmm. We've seen 3 years from the time Trump ran, 2015, 2016, and 2017. It is not a coincidence. And that's. I don't know what we're going to see in the new numbers for 2018. I imagine a spike. I know from the Muslim community, we've seen a lot more people getting threats, death threats, shots fired at mosques, people throwing bacon and pork at mosques, which is the dumbest thing ever. Why waste the pork, folks? Just eat it. It's not healthy for you. It's not about religion. It's just not the best food for you. Bacon, have turkey bacon. You'll live longer, but I don't care what you eat or what you drink. Enjoy your life. Just don't throw stuff at other people's faith groups. So, all right, Milton. Thanks, my friend. Thanks for giving me a call. I appreciate it.
No problem, brother.
Take care, brother. Talk to you soon. Take care. Salam. Let's take a quick break. Come back. You're my guest at the top of the hour. 866-997-4748. We have Naira Haq coming on next hour. And then Danny Savalas. It's our Tuesday. He's back to talk about the law and disorder. But I'd love to talk about this. Also, I want to play a couple of clips from Kamala Harris last night, which made a lot of news. By the way, Kamala Harris's town hall last night on CNN was the highest rated town hall for a single candidate running for president in the history of CNN, which is just stunning to me. And by the way, some good news, if you didn't hear, the Democratic response to Trump's speech of lies on Tuesday will be Stacey Abrams. And I have to applaud the Democrats for this great choice. So I'm looking forward to watching Stacey Abrams. I'm not going to watch Trump unless I'm forced to for work. I'll read the transcript perhaps afterwards, but I don't need to watch a speech of lies. But I'm looking forward to Stacey Abrams' response, and I bet you, I'm hoping Stacey Abrams' response, because there is a little break in time, is higher than Trump's State of the Union. I know it's a tall order, but I'm hoping if enough of us don't watch Trump's garbage and then all switch on Stacey Abrams and she gets higher ratings, it drives Trump crazy. Let's take a break. I'd love to hear from you. 866-997-4748 right here on the Dean Obeidallah Show.
The Dean Obeidallah Show.
Whoever's the next president, we should call him the 45th president of the United States. And this will go down